Well, you can speculate all you want about how much water is there, but we don't really know. Same thing with Mars. No, Mars, in terms of water, we know there's plenty of it. It's underground. It's in subsurface glaciers. There's much more than on the moon. But still, it's not just about saying there's water there. You have to establish how easy it is to get to it and how easy it is to extract it. And that's what's called in the mining and also in the oil and gas industry, it's going from a resource to a reserve. You want to have a proven reserve. You want to know exactly so that you can, how much is there and how easy it is to access it, so that then you can develop the technology to get there.
Hello Space Watchers, I'm Emma, the editor-in-chief of SpaceWatch.Global, and this is a new episode of Space Café Radio, your radio channel dedicated to emerging trends and live conferences in the space sector. Hello Space Watchers, and welcome back to another episode of Space Café Radio. Today we have the pleasure to be in the company of Anil Abbud-Madrid, the director of Center for Space Resources at the Colorado School of Mines. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anil, for being here with me. How are you doing?
Hello, Emma. I'm doing fine. It's a pleasure to be at the Space Café.
Exactly. Thank you. It's a live Space Café today, by the way, for once, a different type of format. Maybe you can help me to understand what you guys do here at the School of Mining, and what do you do at the Center for Space Resources?
Yes. Yeah, the Colorado School of Mines was founded 150 years ago. Actually, we are celebrating 150 years to educate those people that came to Colorado looking for resources. This place before 1859 was nothing. It was a place that was considered a desert. In fact, if you look at the maps from that era, it says not viable for human habitation. It was considered a dead place. But the moment that gold and silver was discovered, that attracted thousands of people from the East Coast. They came here looking to get rich. And when that started happening, the school was founded to educate those people to go from just looking for a few nuggets to search for valuable resources. And that's how this became a Colorado territory, and then became a state, and it's now probably one of the most economically successful states in the nation. Obviously, the economy has developed from just gold and silver to other things. It's the second largest aerospace economy in the nation, and the largest on number of jobs per capita in terms of aerospace. So it's become a high-tech state. But the School of Mines was founded basically to how do you identify, how to extract, and how do you utilize resources. Interesting enough, when the space program started in the early 1960s, NASA started looking at, from the very start, of how in the future we can actually use resources in space so that we don't have to bring it from Earth. And one of the first meetings that occurred in 1962 brought together several NASA centers, several companies, looking at how to provide, in that time was oxygen for the Apollo astronauts. And the first academic institution that was there was School of Mines, because we thought with all the expertise that we have on Earth, why not do that in space? We didn't utilize resources because Apollo was about being there for a couple of hours in the moon, so there was no need to create an infrastructure to do that. But we continued doing work on this field. And in 1999, we created the Center for Space Resources to start getting more serious about it. At that time, there was not much interest, except for a few groups at NASA and a few academics. But we've been doing this for 25 years now. It was only until 10 years ago when the interest started really becoming from not just NASA, but different organizations within the government of the United States. Now you have the United States Geological Survey that has also applied their expertise from Earth, doing that in space. The Department of Commerce that now sees that as an economic activity, and they have to get involved. The Department of Energy that is trying to put together a space strategy in terms of solar power, nuclear power, how they're going to do that. The Department of Defense, because the moment you start having economic assets somewhere else, they have to step in to see how they can protect the economic interests of the nation. And then this also exploded in terms of the number of space agencies that are now interested in space resources. In 2016, Luxembourg, one of the smallest countries in Europe,
the world, probably,
they started putting together a plan, the Space Resources Initiative, because they thought this could be a good economic activity in the future. And after that, it's been Russia, it's been Japan, it's been China, it's been Australia, it's been India, Canada, the UAE. These are all countries that are interested in how they can apply their expertise to get involved in the field of space resources. And so, seeing the interest, about 7 years ago, we decided to also create, not only get involved in research, but create a program to educate professionals that are going to be involved in space resources. And we created the Space Resources Graduate Program that provides certificates, masters, and PhDs on this field. We were the first program in the world addressing this because we have been involved in this for quite some time. So here you can see the connection, how we have been doing terrestrial resources for 150 years, and now how we are trying to apply the same expertise, but to do that beyond our planet.
And Anil, what is your expertise within this frame?
So I'm involved in all aspects of the field. When you're looking at resources on Earth or anywhere, you first have to find the resource. So how to prospect, how to use data from satellites to identify resources in different destinations, but also how to drill for this, how to extract the different things, oxygen, water, metals, how to utilize them. We also get involved in the infrastructure that will be needed by anybody that is doing this work. You're going to need power, you're going to need communications and transport. And also getting involved in the economic aspects, how to justify that this could be an economic viable activity, and the legal aspects, which are becoming more and more important. Is it legal to do these type of things? What about the policy aspects, the environmental aspects, even the ethical aspects of space resources? So my colleagues here and myself get involved in all aspects of this field.
I'm very glad that we met. A few weeks ago, within our newsroom, we were following the roller coasters of government emotions regarding Mars. We were following the JPL layoff, the cut to the Mars sample return mission. So one of the questions that we ask ourselves is what's going on? Is Mars still an interesting target for space exploration, for space resources or not? And if not, why? What's going on? So I was wondering maybe if you can help us to understand in the midst of these geopolitical complexities, if Mars is still a destination for space resources, and if yes or no, and why?
Mm-hmm. Mars is very much of interest for scientific reasons, and it has always been. It's a planet, and it's a planet that underwent very interesting geological evolution. It had plenty of water. So from the point of view of understanding a place other than Earth, Mars is obviously the number one objective. The moon is quite different. The moon doesn't, it's important for what we can find out about Earth because the moon was created from a collision, is the most accepted theory right now, a collision of a Mars planet that hit Earth and then he created the moon. And so it holds a lot of information that scientifically is very important. But Mars, from the point of view of a planet, is still the number one objective. And in fact, if you look at the plans from the United States, it's always, we do things like moon, but then on to Mars. Now that's the scientific objective. From the point of view of resources, obviously Mars is very important because we can use those resources to allow us to do more there instead of bringing all the propellant and all the human consumables. See, we could actually get the oxygen and the water and the carbon dioxide that can be converted into methane and oxygen as a propellant. That will allow us to do more in terms of Mars. We have done a lot of Mars. In fact, I would dare to say that we know more about Mars than we know about Moon because we have had all sorts of satellites giving us remote sensing data. We have had several rovers that have been going around. We have explored the North Pole, the intermediate mid-latitudes, the equatorial regions. So we know a lot about Mars already scientifically, But there's always interest from the point of view of life. Mars holds still the possibility of finding life in a different planet. And that is what keeps us going, and more rovers and going to more interesting places. Even this notion of having a sample return that can give us some indication that there could be, or that could have, life could have existed there. So that's what makes Mars interesting, the life aspect. And resources are just a way to allow us to do more research over there. When you think about humans to Mars, then resources become even more important, because if you're going to have a base, and we can start small, 4 to 5 astronauts living there for a year and a half or so, then resources become important, not only for them to survive, because we can probably recycle a lot, but how is that you can generate the fuel to come back? Because it's really hard to bring it all with you, but if we were able to have the propellant to have the return vehicle to come back, that would be very important. So that's where resources come in. Not necessarily for commercial applications. There's no commercial interest on Mars resources, period. There's just, it's only to benefit a space agency and exploration. How can we do more with less and use the resources that you have there to live off the land and be able to do all the scientific things that we want to do? That's the value of resources on Mars. The moon is different. The moon is, the resources are about how we can utilize those resources to generate propellant, that we can lower transportation costs. We can even refuel in the space between Earth and the moon, what's called the cislunar space. And so there's more commercial interest on the moon than for Mars. So again, Mars is important for science, for life, and resources is just an enabling mechanism to do more of it.
So Mars is still in the hands of governments and public entities somehow?
Yes, until SpaceX came along. And it changed a little bit the perspective that a company was interested in going to Mars. Why? There's interest from an individual that has a goal to do that with the purpose of having not just a base, but at some point even have a place where you can have a community of humans that can go there and eventually make it a place where humans can live. So that's the objective of a company like SpaceX. And when they come along, bringing capability to launch a large amounts of equipment, and that can make possible life, humans going to Mars, that changes the equation radically. So the U.S. or the space agencies are interested on how to get more data or more science out of the planet, but a company is interested on developing a settlement. And that changes the equation more towards the commercial aspect of something like this.
I would be curious to understand what's the business case behind a settlement on Mars, because it still seems quite fragile in a sort of way.
It is, and there's no
security.
No, and it won't get commercial until you get enough people that are going to be living there permanently. Then maybe you have a case, but that's really far out in the future.
So one of the most common questions we get asked is how far out we are. So I remember one of the first declaration by Elon Musk was like, we're going to be on Mars by 2024. We are not.
No.
In your expert opinion, how far we are from a vision of a stable human community on Mars? A
stable, permanent human community, that's going to take a while. We may be on Mars with humans in the next 15, 20 years, but it's going to be a visit by a small crew, and they're going to be there for months or a year at a time, and they come back and maybe another crew will be there. But a permanent community living on Mars, I just do not see it in the horizon for another 50 years or so.
Plus. So. Last question on Mars. Which type of breakthrough technologies do you think we need still to develop to actually make Mars sustainable, not only from a scientific point of view, but also from a commercial point of view?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Moving is right up there with death and divorce in the Stress Olympics. But fear not. Turn that box of woes into a crate of woes with moving tips in the Life Beyond Boxes podcast with Premium Q Moving. Dive into the world of hassle-free moves, learn tips and tricks to save on cash and your sanity. Say goodbye to those moving meltdowns and hello to the smooth sailings, or should we say smooth movings? Tune into Life Beyond Boxes with Premium Q Moving on lifebeyondboxes.com or find us on your favorite podcast platform. And with us, unpack the secrets to a stress-free move.
What type of technologies? It's not about the technology. Technology is something that we can develop quite rapidly. Obviously, you need to have humans living on Mars under a harsh environment of radiation, practically a vacuum. It has an atmosphere, but it's practically a vacuum, and it's CO2. You cannot breathe it. So you have to develop all that and put it in place. That can be done. You can use technology to absorb the carbon dioxide of the atmosphere and convert it into oxygen. You can breathe it. You can also ingest the carbon dioxide and make it react with hydrogen that can be obtained from water that could be plentiful, and create methane and oxygen as propellant, which is the propellant that SpaceX rockets use. That's all doable. It is why are we going? Is the justification? Is it science? Is it commercial? That's what's going to drive that we're going there, and then it will justify all the technology that you want to do. That's what is happening on the moon. Now there's an impetus to go there. Technology is being developed, and we will see hopefully a settlement or a base by the end of this decade. That's very doable. But Mars has quite a challenge. It's how to, first of all, get humans over there as fast as possible, be subjected to very intense radiation and live in a harsh environment. Psychologically, it's also very different to see Earth in the horizon than to see a little dot. So you're going to have to adjust to that. So those are the type of things that are making it difficult to think that way.
Thank you very much. Anil, anything else you would like to add?
When you're talking about why Mars, humans, and also science versus resources, I just have to go back to the first meeting that NASA had in 2015, when it brought for the first time together scientists and space resources experts to look at the first base on the moon. What is going to be needed to have a base that you can have that can be constantly inhabited? So you're going to have humans there for the first time, 5 or 6, a year and a half or so, and then be replaced by another one. So it was a very interesting meeting because for the first time, NASA was thinking, all right, this is the purpose, and we're going to do this in the 2030s. What's needed to do that? Scientists obviously said it would be great to have humans there because we can pick all sorts of interesting places geologically. But NASA also wanted to ask space resources, but it's not just scientifically interesting. We're going to need water, basically. And first and foremost is water. Water for humans, water for making the propellant. And so it was interesting that scientists gathered there and everybody picked their preferred place for science. But from the point of view, we had an input. You're going to have to be at a place where you can find water easily. And so that started driving the search for easy to get water. Can it be some subsurface glacier that is just a couple of meters down and you just drill and you get it? Or can you obtain them for what's called hydrated minerals? You can heat them up and you extract the water. So there was a study that was done to do a trade. And the requirements were very specific. It has to be between 50 degrees north and 50 south. This is where the base is going to be. It's going to have to, I believe it was about 100. There was a certain distance in which you can have the base. It has to have access to resources and it has to have access also two geologically interesting places. You're going to have to find enough water to produce 16 tons of propellant, enough to return those humans back to Earth. So it was getting serious at that point, and it still is, because for the first time you had engineers and scientists talking to each other and saying what is going to be required in order to have a base and also to explore the place for interesting science. And that's still the case. That's still what NASA would like to achieve, a place where you can do this. Out of the study, it was clear that it depends where you're going. If you're going to the mid-latitudes, 40 degrees, 50 degrees, water may be available just from subsurface glaciers. But if you want to be more in the equatorial region, you may actually have to go in and excavate some of the hydrated minerals, heat them up, and get some water. But we don't know the answer yet, but at least we start thinking now how to do this in terms of getting a small crew that can be there and can be replaced every couple of years. So.
And sorry, now you fired my geological brain, so I have another question. I'm sorry. I remember I read a few months ago a USGS report about moon resources. And it's not a this year resource, probably 2020, 2019. So it's not so recent. But I remember I was quite surprised about seeing the uncertainties on the actual amount of water that we think, we presume that there might be on the moon. So my question for you is, do we actually have some solid data about how much water there is on the moon, or we're still in a kind of exploratory phase and we need to go there to understand how much water is actually available?
We are still in the very early phases we know that there is water from mostly remote sensing. There was only one data point that we got from a spacecraft that crashed on the Cabellos crater. There was a plume of material that came out and water was detected. But we don't know the amount. We don't know the concentration. We don't know the distribution. We don't know the texture. We don't know how accessible it is. So we are in the very early phases of finding that out. So you can speculate all you want about how much water is there, but we don't really know. Same thing with Mars. No, Mars, in terms of water, we know there's plenty of it. It's underground. It's in subsurface glaciers. There's much more than on the moon. But still, it's not just about saying there's water there. You have to establish how easy it is to get to it and how easy it is to extract it. And that's what's called in the mining and also in the oil and gas industry, it's going from a resource to a reserve. You want to have a proven reserve. You want to know exactly so that you can, how much is there and how easy it is to access it, so that then you can develop the technology to get there. Then the rest will come. There are three things, and we drill this in all of our students, that you need to know when you're going to go after resources on Earth, Mars, Moon, or wherever it is. One, you have to have a proven reserve. That means you know your resource with enough geological, engineering, scientific, but also economic, legal, environmental certainty that you know that you can go after it. Second is to have the technology to extract it. And third, as important, if not more important, is to have a customer. If there's nobody that wants that, and customer could be a space agency, it could be a company, but if there's nobody that wants it, there's not a resource. It's just an element of scientific interest. And that's where we are right now in all of these destinations. We don't know exactly what the resource is. We have not developed the technology, and we don't even know if there's a customer. But these three things are being explored at the same time, and it's becoming more apparent that on the moon will be much easier to solidify those three aspects than on a place like Mars.
Or at least develop the technology that then you can export to the
in fact,
planet.
What you're seeing right now, even as we speak this year, you're going to have several missions going after giving us more understanding of identifying the resources. But at the same time, we're having technology demonstrations of equipment that will be used to extract it, because you have to do this at the same time. And we're starting to see who's going to need this. Space agencies are definitely interested. Now you got companies involved. So these three things are starting to being developed at the same time on the moon. Mars is still much farther away, literally.
And when it comes to resources, when it comes to moon resources, or maybe let's stick to the moon, that is a bit easier. What's your view when it comes to the legal side of space resources? Who can utilize them? Can you sell them? Can you resell them? How do we balance the respect of the Outer Space Treaty with the need of commercialization? What is your perspective on this legal aspect?
As the interest on the moon and resources started picking up about 10 years ago, the legal aspects started moving as quickly as this. The moment that it became apparent that resources would be an objective, then yes, we have the Outer Space Treaty and things from 1967, but interest from individual countries started really heating up. In 2015, the U.S. passed a law that allows any citizen, any company that resides in the United States can actually go after extracting, even selling the resource, as long as it's all under international treaties. So they're still respecting the Outer Space Treaty. Doesn't get too clear about it. It tells you that you cannot own a celestial body, but it doesn't really tell you if you can extract or sell what it is in there. So it's open to some sort of discussion. In 2016, Luxembourg also put together the first European legal framework, and then it was the UAE and then Japan. But there were groups like the Hague Space Resources Group that started talking about how you can get more countries involved in this. Then it was the Artemis Accords, that now you have countries banding together and saying, as long as we play by the rules, it's okay to go after resources. And now there's a subcommittee under the United Nations that is looking at resources. So it's becoming more and more serious. And it's becoming more and more apparent that companies and agencies are going to go after it. It's just how do you start doing it in a fair way and a responsible and a sustainable way. So it's clear now that resources will be allowed. It's just how you do it so that, everybody can participate on this.
Thank you very much. I think we drilled you enough. This was a fantastic interview, Anil. Thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, and I hope that we will have the chance to discuss again about the moon, about Mars, about resources in general.
Let's hope we can do it once we are actually on the surface of the moon.
There you go. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you want to keep the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global. Subscribe to our newsletters, and of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Emma Gatti, Editor-in-Chief of SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space. See you next time. Ciao.